how was it really, what really happened. And it's kind of ironic because the culmination of the story is in Q1 of next year, we're going to launch a new product called esketamine, which is the result of what I'm about to tell you. And so it has a happy ending, but it wasn't always destined to happen that way. I was working in Europe, and the company signed an agreement with a company called Elan. And Elan is a small biotech, and they just published the first ever successful phase 2 data in Alzheimer's disease. It said the potential for this product is $40 billion. So they did the deal in, I think, July of 2009. I arrived in Global in early 2010, and we got some bad news. The studies failed. And I just remember thinking, the world is about to end, right? Like, this is the end of the neuroscience TA, we spent all this money. And there was some discussion, of course, I got back, there was some discussion about a recovery plan, and there was some backup molecules and all this. But once people lose a little bit of faith in the mechanism, in the product, and the partnership, it was hard to get Pfizer to invest anything, it was hard to get money from our own R&D organization to invest. And basically the program went away, we had to shut down the BAPI program. We lost, I think, 180 of the 200 employees that were working on it. So I found myself in the middle of a crisis, and that was really what I wanted to talk about. So what do you do? I was sitting in a room one day and writing down some principles myself, like, so how are we going to get ourselves out of this situation? Okay, number one, we need something that's been tested in humans, because I don't believe any of the hype or any of the theory. Number two, don't tell me something that is going to be launched in 10 years' time, because the investors in our, internal investors are not going to accommodate that, right? This has to be something that has like a 3 or 4 year time frame, so it has to be real, has to be near term, and it has to be at least empirically proven. So we pulled together some sub-members of the LT, we brainstormed ideas, and honestly, after about 3 or 4 weeks, nothing was coming out. And then one day, eventually in a meeting, somebody said, the only thing we haven't talked about is ketamine. And the whole room just went like this. Okay, you need to tell me, because I haven't heard the history of ketamine, what's that about? And it turns out that there had been 5 commercial evaluations of ketamine, and every single one had come back, there's no commercial opportunity for this molecule. So I went and talked to one of the scientists who'd actually used ketamine at the NIH, and he'd used it on patients, and I asked him to describe what's it like to use the product, and he said, you know what, you can take a patient who is suicidal to the point they have to be restrained from hurting themselves, and you give them ketamine, and I've seen people literally 2 hours later indistinguishable from a normal human being. So, okay, this has to be it, right? There has to be opportunity here for something as a product. So we kicked off a team, and my briefing to the team was, go find a way to make this a commercial opportunity. We're going to do the 6th evaluation at this time, we're going to do a good job. They went away and the team did a fantastic job. So they found an isomer of ketamine, it's called S, literally S, ketamine for the chemist in the room, right? So now you'll see it written as ES, S-ketamine. They found a new way to dose the product. So ketamine itself is an IV infusion, so S-ketamine is now a nasal spray. They found a new device that could be used to apply the product. They got the IP lawyers in, they had the supply chain people, and they found a solution, and they ended up coming together with a plan that's generated now for the US 5 years at least of exclusivity, and the rest of the world 10 years. And we're going to be launching that in 2019. Okay, it's got accelerated approval, and there's huge plans. We're going to be hiring hundreds of people, and the day it launches, I'm going to phone Husseini, because that'll be a very proud moment. So that's the story, and I guess I have some lessons learned to think about, because one day, you guys are going to be in leadership positions, you're going to be faced with a situation like that, and 3 things I think I learned from the process. One of them is, you've got to somehow stay strong for the team. And that sounds really easy, I understand, stay strong, that's going to be great. So it's a different feeling when it's your own job, and your own team, your own business that's at risk. Because in your own mind is, what am I going to do if the neuroscience business gets shut down? Do I have another job? I was over here on an assignment from Europe with my family here. I just moved them all over, the kids are in school, and it goes through your head, personally is, I'm at risk, right? There's a lot of churning in your own mind, and at the same time, you've got to project to your team and to your business partners some degree of confidence and strength. And that's not easy, and you're only going to learn that by just doing it. The second thing is, when you're in a crisis situation, you don't know what the answer is, and you have to fall back on something, right? It's not like you wake up one morning and go, oh yeah, I know what the answer is. You have to fall back on something. So what did I fall back on? I fell back on some empirical principles. What has worked in the past? What worked in the past in neuroscience was give people drugs. This is how Paul Janssen got started, by the way, in the 1950s in Belgium. He literally brought patients in and he gave them stuff and see if they got better. That was his science. You couldn't do it now, right? Because the regulators didn't have to do it. But that's how he did. That's how neuroscience development was always done. That's where Risperdal came from, where Haldol came from, all those products. Paul Janssen just giving people drugs and see, like, do your symptoms improve? And so in neuroscience, the empirical principle I fell back on is show me the human data. I don't want to hear the theory, I want to see the result in a human being, and are they any better? And then the kind of business principle, which is if you show up with a program that says, trust me, give me 10 years of investment and then I'll show you a product, forget it, which is where the R&D guys were coming from, right? So falling back on some principles, and then a process which is put a team together and give them an objective, even when you don't know what the answer is. Give the team an objective, give them time, give them resource to go work on that, and then you have to trust them a little bit. And then the last thing I would say is you have to really force yourself to stay optimistic in a situation like that. And again, it sounds really easy, I'm just going to be positive about it, but when you're watching a movie, you know there's going to be a happy ending. When you're in the middle of a crisis, you don't know that there is a solution. And in fact, there were many weeks that went by when I really thought there is no solution here. There's going to be no way out of this because nothing was coming out of the team. But you have to remind yourself, good things can always happen. Right? It's easy to project the bad things. It's harder to imagine the good things. So here's an example from the ketamine work. Is the team got really stuck at one point because we want to do nasal spray, but if we're going to develop a device, that's going to add 2 or 3 or 4 years to the development timeline and a huge amount of cost, and we can't, and we don't have the capabilities internally. We can't do anything. So again, team is stuck. What are you going to do? Well, guess what? It turns out somebody did a scan and found out that Hospira had recently acquired some technology that they were sitting on that was potentially being used for another product. They'd done a lot of the development work, a lot of the clinical pre-work, and we paid them $1 million and got the rights to the product. And that's where the spray devices came from. It was an old Hospira thing that we licensed. So who knew that was out there? I mean, you never know. The team found it, and it took 3-4 years out of the timeline and created the product that we have today. So you've got to remind yourself then to be optimistic and trust that not all the winds are going to go against you, even if they might in the end, right? That's good stuff can happen. So I wanted to share that with you. I have to say that it is a happy ending. It was not necessarily going to be a happy ending, and you have to be prepared for that. And the feeling of going through that situation is anxiety and worry and concern and personal churn and team members turning up in your door saying, I've just bought a house and what shall I do, and am I going to have a job in 3 weeks, and what's going to happen to the TA? So you have to deal with a lot of that, and at the same time try and process the findings and try to generate some solutions. So one day somebody may write this up and say, the story will be Andy woke up one morning and realised that the answer was a nasal spray. It's ketamine, and that's where this multi-billion-dollar product came from. That it could not be further from the truth, and the real world is much messier than that.
Did you identify any opportunities to say, hey, this is what we have to do because there's no other option? And what did that look like? What did those conversations sound like?
I leveraged the crisis. I tried to survive the crisis, honestly. I guess we leveraged it from the point of view that we were all thrown into the same situation together, and it was clear what the challenge was, right? We don't have a viable business anymore, and we need to present back to our senior leadership something that looked credible enough to continue to fund.